Hi, hello everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We've got people joining us, which is great to see. I can see some familiar names, which again, I'm always happy to see people returning to our webinars. Some new people as well, welcome. Hello Kai, nice to see you, sort of, again. Everyone who is now joining, if you would like to say hi in the chat where you're watching us from, that would be great. And yeah, we'll give it another minute because it usually takes people a couple of minutes to join us. Yeah, and we've got the chat option, which should be available to all of you. I can see people actually adding messages, which means it's working well, which is great. Although we've got people from Sweden, Guatemala, UK, all around the world, which is amazing. So I'm in the UK as well. Not bad today, it's a good day. And it's 2 o'clock where we are. Yeah, we've got more people joining still. So yeah, a little bit of like housekeeping. So yeah, we've got the chat option here, as you can see. We also have a Q&A option. So if any of you will have any questions during this webinar, which will be mainly demo, please feel free to, at any point, whenever you've got a question, feel free to add it to the chat, or you can use the Q&A option. Either is okay. I will be monitoring those throughout the event, and we will do our best to answer your questions live. If it's a quick answer, then we might even answer it, directly in the chat or in the Q&A. Depends really on your question. But yeah, you do not have to wait until the very end. Just pop your question in the chat or Q&A, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. So yeah, I think it's 3 minutes past, so I think we are good to start. So again, welcome everyone to this webinar. So today we are talking about enterprise Java application development with Jakarta EE and Vaadin, and we've got with us 2 speakers whom you may already know. If you've been attending our previous webinars, you should definitely know Luqman Saeed, who is Payara tech writer and Jakarta EE expert. And we also have a guest speaker, which we are really happy about. Matti Tahvonen joined us today from Vaadin. He's a senior Vaadin expert, and he will also be doing the demo with Luqman for you today. So I think, without further ado, I'll now leave you in the hands of Luqman and Matti. And I think, Luqman, you first, so I'll stop sharing and let the coding begin.
Yes, thank you very much, Dominica. I'll just share my screen here. Screen 2, share. Hopefully everybody can see my screen.
Yeah, all seems good. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so without further ado, today we are gathered here to take a look at Vaadin with Jakarta EE. Now, I'm going to start off by taking a look at a high-level overview of Jakarta EE for those of you that are not familiar with it, and for those of you that are familiar, sort of a refresher. Now, you all know Jakarta EE is a general-purpose high-level development platform for developing multi-tier applications using the Java programming language. And obviously, using Java means that a lot of Jakarta EE developers, or almost all Jakarta EE developers, are Java developers. And so we use Jakarta EE for all sorts of applications, from dummy applications to sending Mars rover to the moon. Everywhere you look, there is something about Jakarta EE in there. Now, Jakarta EE over the years, or over the past decades, has been the de facto enterprise development platform. Now, most applications in the end require some sort of UI to present the application to the client or to the users. And as time evolves, the paradigms for developing UI for applications also changes. Now we are in an era where everything is so user experience focused that users have come to expect user interfaces to be of certain caliber, certain class, and certain experiences. And so this throws a challenge to us as developers. How do we meet these requirements, this constantly changing, this fast-paced requirements of user experiences? Now, if you're a Java developer like me, you have a number of options on the Jakarta EE platform for creating modern and very beautiful, very shiny, and really applications with great user experiences. And one of those options is Vaadin. Now, before I come to Vaadin, there are other options. But again, from the perspective of a Java developer, to get the job done and get it done fast with minimal hassle, without having to worry about XML or JavaScript or TypeScript or Gulp or NPM or any of the myriad of technologies you need to know to create the kind of user experiences that users have come to expect, then you would always be out looking for something that you can get done in Java. And the Java language is a very powerful language, very easy to use language. And if you ask me, very productive language. So if there is a framework that you can develop your UIs in using the Java language on top of your Jakarta EE applications, then why not? I would say. So yeah, why not to give it a try? And that is where Vaadin comes in. Vaadin, as you'll be getting more from Matti, is a very powerful user interface framework for developing modern applications. And the good thing with Vaadin is that you as a Jakarta EE developer and underneath that as a Java developer don't really need to worry about anything beyond your favorite language, Java. So you just write your user interface, you create your user interface in Java, and then you just see it in the browser. It's almost like magic. And so you are abstracted, just like Jakarta EE itself abstracts you from a lot of things. Vaadin also abstracts you from knowing a lot of technicalities or technical things underneath the APIs that you are using. So this session here is for introducing you to the Vaadin framework and what you can do with it as a Java developer. So let me just hand over to Matti, who can give you more information and demo to you how you can get started with Vaadin on the Jakarta EE platform. Over to you, Matti.
Thank you, Luqman. Yes, I think that was actually a pretty good intro to Vaadin already. So that's what we are doing. So we are doing abstractions. And with Vaadin, as you said, you can use plain Java. And you also, like Vaadin itself, it also abstracts away the whole client-server communication. So you will be doing applications like you would have been doing those in the good old swing days, like in desktop applications or with SWT, like if you will be doing Eclipse development. So the API is more closer to like a normal desktop UI development that was planned or like designed originally for languages like Java, and you will be using your object-oriented skills, and you will be building blocks in the UI like components, and you will be composing new components of the existing ones, and this way you will be creating the UI. It works very well for like a dynamic big UIs, and but it's not the only option to go with when you're building web applications, and I don't think that you should be using Vaadin for each and every use case. So if you are building like a basic website that is just displaying existing data from the database, for example, I think you have better tools in the core Java EE toolchain than Vaadin for that. But if it's more like an application where you are also inputting data there and doing some rich validations, like your typical business applications, like backend applications, those are a perfect spot for Vaadin. So don't try to use it for each and every task, but for many big applications, it's a very good tool. Let's actually start by creating a new Vaadin application, so then I can easily explain how Vaadin works, because I know that there is a lot of engineers there. So let's start with the Vaadin archetype. Let's create Vaadin archetype application. So this is the most simplest one. For some reason, NetBeans is suggesting me a bit old version. So this is 24.0.5. I think this is the latest one that we have. Let's call it Payara example. And click finish. And now we have a new project. And if you look at the project from the POM XML file, we will see that Vaadin actually requires just the servlet API. But because we now have a full Java EE server, so it's probably best to use, instead of the servlet API, let's use Jakarta Platform, and then Jakarta Java EE API. So now we have all the good things that Payara comes out of the box with. Actually, this version needs to be updated, so that's going to be 10.0.0. And Vaadin also comes integrations with, for example, CDI. So then you have some scopes in CDI for Vaadin UI classes that helps quite a lot if you want to integrate into some existing services that you have created. If you have created, for example, EGP or some application scoped CDI services, you can directly inject those into your Vaadin UI classes if you are using the Vaadin CDI plugin. So let's take that dependency in as well. So if you type here Vaadin CDI, the version is coming from the POM file. So now we have the Vaadin CDI there as well. And now if we look at actually this app shell, this is obsolete or something that you usually don't need. So if you want to make a progressive web application that you install on your mobile devices, then you need to have this configuration class, but let's remove it for now. And now we have a main view here, and let's deploy this. Let's run this in Payara. Let's remember it forever. And let's look at the code while the Payara is starting. So basically what we are doing here is that we have a one view, which is called main view, and we are using this root annotation, which is mapping this main view into some certain part of your application. We could define the actual URL path here as well, but we will be using the default here, and because it's named as main view, then it will be mapped to the root context. But you could also type here, for example, Payara, and then it would be mapped to this URL. But usually you can just go with the naming-based approach. And we are extending from vertical layout component, and to that we are adding another component here, which is button. And in the button click listener, we are simply adding a new paragraph to the layout. And here we have the UI running. I don't have JRebel installed. You probably want to have that if you want to get a really nice developer experience, but we will be doing just fine without it as well. So now if I click this, it will go to the server side click listener. So it will be executing this code, and there it will be adding a new paragraph to the view. And behind the scenes, we are seeing some HTML. So this is what gets generated. So there will be HTML, and there will be this Vaadin vertical layout component, which is behind the scenes. That's going to be web component. That's why you have this Vaadin -vertical -layout tag here. So it's not a standard HTML tag, but a web component. Then we have this standard P paragraph tag, and then we have the button here. And if we click again, it should be adding new paragraphs to the DOM. And this all works so that when you actually arrive to the page, I will reload the page now. So now when I arrive here, Vaadin first goes to the server, and on the server that is executed, and a new instance of this is created for each and every user. And then on the browser side, we will get a response from the server that, okay, now it should draw this button to the screen and nothing else. And now when we click this again, it will send a message to the client side, to the server side, and it will execute the click listener, and then it executes these changes, and then it calculates kind of a diff that what happened to this existing view. And now the only thing that is sent back to the client side is a tiny JSON message, like behind the scenes, a tiny JSON message that says that please add this kind of a paragraph to this vertical layout in the client side. And that's why when I click here, it doesn't cause a full page reload, but it's kind of a single page web application. And that gives the user much better user experience, especially when they have a lot of data on the screen. JSF is doing kind of similar things as well, but these Ajax things, they are kind of not built into that. So everything gets basically rendered on the server side unless you are doing some special things. So Vaadin is kind of from ground up built to this Ajax age. It has been there for quite some time actually already. It was like more than 15 years ago when I joined the company, we already had a similar system working. At that time, it was actually built with JavaScript. Then we moved over to Google Web Toolkit, and all those components that we had for around 10 years or so were built with Google Web Toolkit, and we created a lot of new components. And then around 5 years ago, we created a new version called Vaadin 10. And that was then actually using these web components instead of Google Web Toolkit to implement the client-side components. But the server-side API, that remained pretty much the same. So we actually renewed some of the Bootstrap APIs, but the actual usage remained pretty much the same. So let's do something else here as well. So let's, for example, create a new grid, which is far more advanced. Let's use string there as a type. So this is a bit more advanced component that comes out of the box. And let's add a column. So now we are using the string, and let's say length. So now we will be taking the length of each string added to the thing, and then also let's add the actual string as well. So let's map string to string, and then create set items. So items are basically collection, or well, we can also use here a couple of strings as array as well. So let's say foo bar Matti Luqman, and then we will add that also to the same component. So now this is going to the vertical layout directly in the constructor. So now we should have another component on the screen, except I think my variable is not working. So okay, it is working. So now we have the grid component here. We didn't add any headers actually. Let's add those as well. So let's add set header length. And let's also reorder those. String itself. So now we should have headers as well for the grid. So this is how you start to compose your UI, and then in any larger application you will be, of course, extending components. So then you're probably making, for example, new classes here and extending them from vertical layout. You might have some part that you are using in different places of your applications. So then you create one component, and then you will be just placing it, that same component, to the different views, and so on. So only Java, if you want. You can do some extensions. So in case some of our components, which we have quite a lot, if those are not enough for some reason, then you can create new components. So then you will be needing some front-end skills. So then you will need to know how HTML works and some JavaScript. But then finally, when you have your component ready, then you also have the Java API, and then at that point, your actual application code will be for Java, and it will be easier to read. And as I don't remember how you, Luqman, said it yesterday, but when we were preparing for the webinar, you had a great advertisement for Vaadin. Was it something about like it's like a story when you're reading Vaadin UI code?
Yes, you can just read it. It's Java code. You can just read and know. So I say, okay, there's a grid type to string. It is adding a column, add a column, it's setting the items, add something. So yeah, you can just read it like, and that's a beautiful thing about Java and Vaadin. Yeah.
If you want to like see how to create those components, we have a pretty nice documentation. So if you will choose the flow framework, which is the framework part, and we have here the components area where these are instructions for the built-in components that we have. There's quite a few of those. And then if you look into, oh, no, where is it? Is it application basics? No, creating UI. Yeah, so here, when you're creating new components, here you will see how to access with, for example, DOM structures or execute JavaScript in the browser. And this way you will be creating new abstractions over existing components. But one way to avoid that altogether is that you go to vaadin.com/directory. So this is a place for Vaadin community to share integrations to existing web components or some custom components that they have built. So most of the things that are listed here are some kind of community contributions or like additional components that you can use in your Vaadin applications. And there's quite a bunch of those. So let's take, for example, full calendar for flow. So this is a calendar implementation, and I would expect that this full calendar thing, this is some kind of a JavaScript component. Yes, and yeah, this is a JavaScript widget that is creating this kind of a normal calendar implementation, and then this add-on, this full calendar for flow add-on, you can take the. Oh, let me just rearrange my screen a bit so you can click on the off. Where did I go? Okay, let's take another component there. So if you click on install and Maven POM, you can just copy this Maven snippet into your application, and then you have the API for that component integration. Here we have another JavaScript widget integration, and this is to charts. And yeah, most of these extensions, most of these are fully open source as well, like Vaadin itself, the core library of Vaadin that comes with Apache 2 license. So it's as free as it can basically get. But then because we need to pay my salary as well, then that's why we are selling some consulting, and we have some commercial extensions also for Vaadin. For example, if you want to get the best chart component, you can get that as an add-on for your Vaadin application. And then we have some, for example, we have extensions for Selenium. If you want to do end-to-end testing, then you can use that, which saves you some time. You can also go with the core Selenium if you want to develop those tests, but our testing automation library that kind of helps you to do the same thing in a bit faster way. Do we have any questions about how Vaadin is working or about Vaadin itself at this point?
Yeah, we've had some good conversations in the chat as well. So some of the questions have been answered already. So yeah, thank you for the attendees actually for engaging in answering questions. But yeah, so we've had I don't know whether you might actually be going into that later, but we've got how do we get to style these components we've added. That's one question.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'll leave it at that, and then we've got another question as well. So
yeah, let's take that styling thing. So Vaadin comes out with the so-called Lumo theme engine, and that most often you don't need to do big changes at all. You can just parameterize that theme, and if you go, for example, to start.vaadin.com, which is kind of a tool that helps you to bootstrap. This is, by the way, creating Spring Boot projects, but you can still use the same generated code by this tool to also like reuse those in your Payara applications. Let me sign in. So this has actually very nice theme editor. So now you can change the primary color, for example, into, let's make it pink. There. Okay, that was primary thing. Let's take the base color. Let's take that as a pink as well. And then we have text color. Let's create that into green. Then you can change styling and roundness and so on. Now, if you create download here, it will give you a zip file. And here you will see in the front-end file, you will see theme, and here you have a CSS file, styles. And if you look into these with, for example, text editor, you will see, okay, this was actually a different project, but here you can see the CSS parameters that are changing in that Lumo theme. So this way, theming Vaadin application is very fast. So you don't need to modify each and every component separately that you have in your UI, but basically every component changes in your application. Let's actually add here another view. Let's, for example, add master detail view. So here you can now see, for example, the form. And now let's go to that theme and change, for example, into smaller spacing and size. Now you can see that all the inputs in the form are actually changing. So no need to change each and every component individually. But basically you will be using CSS, raw CSS there. And there is like that's one part where you actually need to do some front end or touch some front end technologies. So we don't have any API or any API that you should be using for the theming itself. If you want to make some like one component specific theme, then of course you can go to the low level API. But this is something that you should actually consider. So you can go to get element and then style and set color green. This way you can create the existing button or take the existing button and make that green. Localhost. I wonder what was the name? Payara. So now you can see that the button is actually green here, but this is a very bad practice to do. So I would suggest to do this kind of hacking only if you are creating those own custom components. So then it's fine to go to the get element style, or that's basically a different abstraction level in Vaadin, and that's fine to use, but use it carefully at your own risk.
There are some questions here. I think we can just address them as we go. One says, what are the advantages and benefits of Vaadin over GSF, especially to us as enterprise systems developers? I think for me, if you ask me, and Matti will also share his view, one is not better or has advantages over the other. They are all tools for solving different problems. And you can use both of them in the same application in different parts of a larger application. So it's not JSF versus Vaadin, but rather JSF and Vaadin. They are all options. As I always say, if you're a chef, the more tools you have in your arsenal, the better chef you become. So the more tools you have in your arsenal as a developer, the better and efficient you become at solving different problems. So Vaadin is neither better better than JSF or JSF better than Vaadin. They are both different frameworks with different development paradigms for solving different problems and even targeted at different developer tastes. So you just pick what works best for you and then you just carry on with it. And then Matti, there's also another one that says, am I able to add JavaScript?
How to add JavaScript here?
Yeah.
Let's add some JavaScript. So this is also the lower level application API that or framework API that you should be using only when you're actually creating those components. But here we can get elements. So this gives us basically a wrapper for the element backing this button component on the browser side. And then we have quite a lot of APIs here. We could, for example, set attributes or properties directly to the element itself, but we can also execute JavaScript. So we could actually, we don't need any parameters here for this example, but now this refers to this element. So this is JavaScript now. And then we could say style color, and let's make the same thing. So let's make it green here as well, but this time with JavaScript green. So now this snippet of JavaScript is executed in the context of that button element. Let's click save and reload the page, and it's still green. So this is how you will be creating those integrations when you actually want to integrate some JavaScript component, or if you want to customize something just tiny bit in the existing components, then you can execute these things. And if you want to inject, for example, some existing JavaScript library here, you can call npm package. So this draws in the npm package itself, and then use JavaScript module annotation and give it a parameter that my library, something like this, and then you have that npm package included into your in this when this view is loaded. But that's actually quite advanced topic. So I like coming back to the previous question. A very good thing for Vaadin is that you can stick to one language only. So that's Java. And the other one is that you only need to know one language and only. So you don't need to use any other languages at all. So that's quite different, and you don't need to even touch HTML at all. So that's like very, very high abstraction compared to also JSF. So with JSF, you usually you have these XHTML pages, and then you are adding your custom tags there with like from the JSF core or some rich faces things. But with Vaadin, it's you don't have even that XML file at all. You only have Java code. So that's kind of one abstraction over Vaadin. I like coming back still to that previous question. I would also again want to emphasize that Vaadin is not the right tool for each and every Vaadin like applications. It's very good tool for these dynamic applications, but if you have, for example, a blog post, a blog page, so if you would want to create a new WordPress site and create that with Java, I would definitely take JSF instead of Vaadin for that, because with JSF all the rendering happens on the server side, and that has some advantages. So it's not good for the UX, and and Vaadin is probably faster way to build the whole application itself. But if you want that to be perfectly indexed by Google, then Vaadin is not the best tool for that. You can write a web page as well with Vaadin, but don't expect that Google will index that perfectly. It can understand Vaadin applications and it will index the content there, but it probably doesn't know how to navigate inside the Vaadin applications, like go to each portion of your Vaadin applications automatically, and it will also punish all SPAs. So if you write a Google, if you want to write a good web page, you shouldn't be using React or Angular or Vaadin. Just use something that gets actually rendered on the server side and ship that HTML directly to the browser. That way you will be much higher in the Google results. But for many applications, it doesn't matter at all.
We've got another question from Gabriel, who is asking how does the HTML code of your example looks like, view source from browser, as he's very new to Vaadin.
Yeah, I think we actually quickly showed that already, but this gets generated dynamically on the browser. So when you actually reload this page, there is almost nothing here. So if you look into inspect element and on the network, this is the actual document. So here the HTML is actually very short. There is basically just an empty body tag and some JavaScript that actually kickstarts the Vaadin UI code, and then it loads it. But if you use the inspect element inspector, here you will be seeing those Vaadin components. So these are the same ones that we saw on the IDE. So now we have the vertical layout, and inside that we have this Vaadin grid that we are creating and adding here. And then we have that button in the bottom that we are adding here as a last one. So also the HTML is very readable, but I would say that most Vaadin developers rarely look into this actual HTML structure. So if you are creating that theme and want to customize the theme itself, then you will most probably be using browser inspector, and then you will be targeting these components with your CSS clauses. Or then you will be giving that job to some of your front-end developers who will be happy to use CSS on your Vaadin application as well. All right. Was there still some questions, or should we look into another more advanced example?
I think we can move forward, and if we haven't asked, if we haven't answered some questions, we missed anything. Oh, I think we've just got one more question. Hang on, let's do that one then. Does Vaadin have access to the USB devices connected to the computer accessing the web page? I have a Swing application that is accessing devices connection to the host computer via USB. Was wondering if I could use Vaadin to access the host computer devices over a web page.
Yeah, you can do that with Chrome to some extent, but not with Safari that I'm using here. So you can use the USB. I think it's Web USB API that is available for Chrome if you enable some experimental thing. Okay, it's actually not experimental, so no need to enable some special flags. So in Chrome-based browsers, that is possible to integrate that kind of things. I don't have examples for that, but if you Google for web Bluetooth Vaadin, I think you should find one of my blog posts. And this is pretty much the same, but using Bluetooth, and using this web Bluetooth API, you can actually access your devices as well, and it's fairly simple to make these integrations into your actual Vaadin UI code as well. Another option that might be possible in some cases, if the server happens to be somewhere around that USB device, then you can just plug it into your server and access it directly from the server application, which might be more stable and easier. So if that's like statically in some certain place, that USB device, then I would definitely try to plug it into the server directly and use it from there, because then you wouldn't need to be doing any JavaScript integrations at all, but you could directly access it from the Java applications and use probably exactly the same code that they are using currently in the Swing application.
Okay, and we've got one more question. Is there any visual UI designer plugin? If so, for which IDs?
Yeah, there is one, but it's only for Eclipse and IntelliJ, and yeah, that is available there. But that's actually generating so-called template files. So it's actually creating HTML templates. That's why I don't personally usually like to use that, but we have a lot of customers who like to use that. So then you will be declaring the UI pretty much like with JSF. So it will be kind of XML syntax that declares the model of the UI, and then you will have kind of an additional Java file that is generated by the designer, and then you can use the Java API to further configure those components. So for example, if you drag in the grid component there, then you can use Java API to assign that into your data.
Yeah, I think that's all questions for now. Sorry.
Yeah.
We can move on when you finish, Matti, because I know
yeah,
I'm aware of the time.
I'm moving on now. So I just deployed this other application into Payara, and this is a bit more advanced example. These sources are in GitHub. We can share the link to the chat as well. I think Luqman, you could do that. So this is more like a full example. So this is using Java EE backend. So if we look at the sources, we have actually some JPA entities here. We have, for example, invoice entity, and then we have a service layer for these. So we have facades that are actually persisting these with the entity manager. This is now using the Java or Jakarta EE default database. So by default, these are in memory, but just by defining a different data source in your persistence XML, you can assign it to basically any data source that you want. And let's look into what this application is doing. So we have products, and here you can see a pop-up component that contains Vaadin. Very simple Vaadin form. So here we can change the artifacts that we have in the listing. Let's change that into one and save it, and then let's see what actually happened in the code. So let's take the product form. So this is the form that was displayed. And we are using here 2 text fields and number fields. So that is the name and price, and the unit is the unit is the other text field, but this was a number field which maps into double in the backend. So this is editing this product entity, and that contains the same lineage unit, price, and product state. And behind the scenes, we are using so-called Finder API in Vaadin that you can use to do validations. And let's actually look into what kind of validations we have here. For example, the name must be maximum 50 characters. So now this is one good way where Vaadin really shines. So now if we type in more than 50 characters here and go forward, we will immediately see that, okay, there is a validation error. So this is kind of the power of Vaadin, that it's a single page web application that creates the user very good UX, but still we are able to reuse exactly the same validation rules. So there was nothing else but this this Java validation API annotation there, and that was enough information for Vaadin to do validation automatically there. You can of course do the validations programmatically as well. So if you want, you can declare that with custom Java code as well, and that's it. And then we have the actual invoices. This is a bit more advanced form here. So we have one example data here. So here we can add new products. So this is the one that we just edited, add some description there. If we change the custom price, let's give some discount for that. Now we can see that this one updated here and no page reload was happened. So Vaadin automatically, or the UI code that has been written to this application is automatically updated this thing here, this small label, and it's basically just like in a desktop application that there is no full page reloads needed anywhere. This is why the user experience is so easy. Let's save that, and then I want to show how to generate a PDF file. So naturally, you will sometimes want to download files as well. So now we downloaded a new file that was this invoice, and that was generated by the JVM system. So this is now the new one, and we have the discount that we actually gave in the UI. So this was done using another JVM library. So this is actually one very good thing that kind of separates Vaadin from, for example, Google Web Toolkit, that you can actually use any JVM library that there is. There is absolutely no limitations because all the UI code is happening in the JVM itself as well. So I'm using in this example a library called xdoc report. So I'm using these dependencies there, and then in the UI invoices view, there should be a download. Let's search for download. So I have a download button. So this no, this was another one. This is the backup file. So yeah, here are the actions that were displayed in the form, and there we have a downloader, and the facade writes the PDF directly to the input stream. So to the output stream. So we will just this is the download stream, or the stream that gets sent to the user as a file. And here we are using this xdoc report system and produce the PDF. All in pure Java here as well. So everything you have written so far, everything that you can find from the Java ecosystem, all that is usable directly for you in your Vaadin UI code. Do we have some other questions here, or should we let Luqman see how to deploy this in production?
Yeah, we've got one more. Does Vaadin or Jakarta EE support Azure Active Directory-based SSO authentication out of the box?
You will need to do some integration for that, but it has been done. So behind the scenes, Vaadin is just a web application. So basically, you can just use the same approaches as you do for other web applications to do this kind of integration to other systems. So let's say that let's go for some place in some code. Let's actually take the original simple example here and get to the main view. So there is Vaadin request. We can have a thread local version of that, and now we have a request, and this is basically just a wrapper for HTTP requests, and you can actually get the wrapped, or is it so that you can actually wrap that into the actual HTTP request as well. But basically, usually in your some kind of a servlet filter, when you are doing this kind of Active Directory integration, you have then the credentials, and then you can get attribute, and this is then proxied directly to the request. And this way, it's fairly simple to do the integrations. I think we created some commercial extensions for Spring Security just recently, and it might have this Active Directory support there, but it's definitely doable, and it has been done.
Great, no more questions. I think we can move on to the next part.
Yeah, Luqman, do you want to show how to deploy this? How you would deploy this into production? You are muted.
Yes. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Why not? Let me just share my screen. Share screen. Okay, somebody's sharing their screen. Okay, share screen. IDE. Yes. Yeah. So Vaadin, being a typical Java web application, we can package it as a WAR file and then deploy it to a compatible container. And in this case, we have Jakarta EE, which is Payara is a Jakarta EE 10 compatible container. So we can simply do maybe clean package -p production.
Yeah. So now this production build, this will take a bit of time. So now we are creating kind of a production-ready bundle from the front-end dependencies that Vaadin and your web application is using. So in development mode, which I was using all the time, Vaadin kind of just quickly throws the development mode inside Vaadin quickly throws all front-end dependencies to the browser. But now we are compacting all that into one bundle, so there will be less that is needed to. It's kind of more optimal for the actual end users now.
And as you can see, like you mentioned, the production mode is a profile in the POM file, which is what I just ran. And the Vaadin simply bundles everything together for me. Now, all I need to do is to copy this to my container. So let me just start my containers here, start it for me. And then I can just copy this for my deployment to be deployed. So in copying this to this folder is mounted in my Docker container to the auto deployment folder in Payara. Payara server has an auto deployment folder where any WAR file or any deployable artifact found in that folder is deployed to the container. So in having this deployment artifact here, this is going to get deployed for me. And sometimes it's so fast you don't see the logs. So let me just do copy and then copy those deployments. As you can see, copying it here, overwriting what is existing, we just redeploy it automatically in the container for me. So you can see it's deploying, and then we should have the successfully deployed here. So the application is deployed in the Payara container. And the beautiful thing about this is that you really don't need to change much. Your knowledge and everything of Java simply transfers over. Your knowledge of Jakarta EE and everything still stays the same. You don't need to cognitively do a lot of context switches and all that. So as you can see, I just deployed this WAR file in a Payara container using a few commands. And as a WAR file or as a Maven web project, you really have the power of everything available to you. So now if I go to localhost, colon 80 slash, let me just copy the context path here, my IDE, JPA invoicer, copy this, and come here, slash this.
You're missing one T.
Yeah. So you can see it's deployed. And this is a pure Jakarta EE application. All the things that you know about Jakarta EE is valid, is in here. And since Vaadin has integrations with Jakarta EE context and dependency, CDI, then you have the entire gamut of features on the Jakarta EE platform available for you to use in developing your business applications. Dominica, any question?
No new questions so far, no.
Yeah, okay, so I think this is all you need to know to get started developing Vaadin applications on the Jakarta EE platform. As Matti mentioned, Vaadin is not a tool for everything, as one of the tools available to you is the right tool for the right job. And if you're developing business-intensive applications, then Vaadin is an obvious choice for you to consider. And since you don't need to change anything, you can simply run it on top of your Jakarta EE stack, then you absolutely need to give this a try. Let me just give over the last word for Matti to say one or two things before we wrap up.
I could actually share this one web page to the chat that contains though a lot of these Hello World starters. Hello World starters. So I'm pasting link there. So this is a website. Maybe I can actually share that as well from my screen. So in case you don't want to use Maven artifacts, then you guys use these starters. So there's a lot of these. Some of our marketing may make it look like these days that we are kind of a Spring Boot framework, but in reality we just require pure Java. You only need a servlet container of some kind, and of course Jakarta EE containers are servlet containers as well. So here you can see starters with plain Java as well. So this is the one. This is basically the same that I did with the archetype in the example, and then we have a one which has already CDI add-on installed. Then we have a special version for Quarkus. And if you don't want to use Maven, you can of course go with Cradle as well. And I think we don't have one with Cradle and CDI, but that's kind of trivial to add the CDI dependency then to this servlet-based example in Cradle. So Vaadin is compatible with virtually anything in the JVM ecosystem as long as there is some sort of support for servlets available. All right. Do we still have any questions? We would have. Okay, we have spent 1 hour now, roughly. But if there is one question, we can take that still.
Yeah, I think Luqman just literally typed his answer to the one extra question. And yeah, and we've got one more. They keep on coming. Thank you, guys. Does Vaadin have any support for accessibility requirements?
I'm actually very happy that this was asked because we have actually invested a lot into the accessibility of the components in the latest Vaadin 24 version. So in Vaadin 23 we improved that already, but for the next version or the latest version of the Vaadin, we were able to change the component structures so that they now apply to the most strictest accessibility standards. I don't remember what its name, but I think we have some kind of a web page for that. Yeah, but basically we had an external consultancy company who was helping us to improve the accessibility support in our components. Naturally, it's not enough if you just take any of our components and just somehow put into the web page. So there are things that you need to take care in addition to just using our components. But the components themselves, they are ready for creating accessible software. But for accessibility, you of course need to spend some time designing it in a way so that it can be used by all people.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Matti. Is there anything you wanted to add, Luqman?
No, I think that's just about it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to, like towards the end, because I know we've got a couple of different people attending. So for those of you who haven't tried yet, Payara platform. So we've got two versions of Payara. There's a community version and enterprise version. And for those of you who don't know, you can actually try a Payara enterprise for free. So if you are using Payara community and you want to see the enterprise features for the Payara platform enterprise, it's very easy to access. You just go to our website, payara.fish, try now, fill in the form, and you will get the email back with the links to download. And I think we actually will have a new release this week. So it will be fresh out of the dev team. So definitely give it a go. Have a look if you haven't already. And yeah, I think that's all from us. Thank you very much, Matti, for being our speaker for today. It's been really good. And I also wanted to thank you everyone who attended for just helping each other in the chat, answering questions for us. So you did some work for us. Thank you for that. And it's been definitely very insightful and informative demo from both Luqman and Matti. The webinar has been recorded, so if you do want to revisit some of what we've shown today, you should be able to access it in a couple of minutes through the same link that you've received through Zoom. And maybe give it an hour or so just to make sure it's processed. And then in a couple of weeks, I'll also publish it in the on YouTube. But for now, you can still use the links that you've got with your registration. And yeah, and we'll have some more webinars coming up soon. So keep an eye on our website. Make sure you subscribe to our blog. And yeah, and we'll hopefully see you soon. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.